Hello, everybody, and welcome to the penultimate Oscar prediction video, where today we will be taking a look at the category of Best Film Editing. Oh boy, it has all led up to this. Even though I'm going to be doing Best Picture tomorrow, film editing is probably the single hardest category to call, in my opinion. What's so hard about it is we can't really rely on the precursors for this one. So, the Critics' Choice Awards gave their prize to Challengers, which is of course not nominated here, and the ACE Eddie Awards, for some reason, they decided to wait until after the Academy Awards to announce their winners. And it's strange. Last year, the WGA did this, and now I guess every year another guild is going to try this. And I wouldn't mind if it was any other below-the-line category, but with editing, we don't know, because it's a lot of the movies that I would assume would be here. A lot of the movies that have the flashiest editing of the year, movies like Challengers and Dune Part 2 and The Substance and September 5, they're not here. And so looking at these 5 nominees, none of them really stands out as, oh yeah, that's the clear winner for best editing. And editing as a whole, I obviously understand why we have this category, because editing is such a crucial part of the filmmaking process. But much like with Best Casting, which is going to be added next year, editing is a process that is kind of difficult to judge from an outside perspective. Unless you were in the room and you saw the process, like, most good editing is editing that you do not notice. And so it's really, really hard to definitively say, oh, this had the best editing of the year. But it's got to be one of these 5 nominees, and so let's take a blind stab in the dark and try to figure out what's winning. 5th most likely to win is The Brutalist. Okay, so I don't really have a lot to go off of in this category, but other than pure instinct. And this particular movie, the thing with The Brutalist is it's 3.5 hours long, which, as a general rule, I tend to not like it when people look at a very long movie and say, oh, that means the editing's bad. The editor should have cut the movie down. I don't really like that as a rule, because it's like, the editor does not really decide how long the movie is. Brady Corbet, when he wrote the script, wanted it to be a very long epic, and when he directed it, it was with the intent that this would be a very long epic. So it's not really the editor's job. If anything, when I watch the movie, I don't really feel like there's anything that could have been cut. It feels like it's all one part of a giant story, and to cut the movie down would be ridding it of a lot of what makes it so powerful. But with that said, a lot of Oscar voters are not going to share the same insight as me. A lot of Oscar voters just think long movie equals poorly edited. And maybe that's a kind of a weak reason, but I just don't see a lot of voters going for this, unfortunately. 4th most likely to win is Emilia Perez. Okay, so this one is a little bit interesting, because the movie, you cannot deny that it certainly has flashy editing, especially during the musical sequences, which would make it stand out, would make it a strong contender to win this category, were it not for the fact that the movie is so widely hated. Now, before the Carla Sofia Gascon tweets resurfaced and the controversy really reached mainstream levels, there was a point in time in which I thought that this could win Best Picture. And if we were still living in that world, then I'd say seriously watch out for this to win editing, because this is exactly the sort of thing that they go for. It feels like Bohemian Rhapsody, with the jarring jump cuts and the noticeable to a fault editing that the film has. But now that we live, because of the controversy that's surrounding this movie, my gut is telling me this film is only going to win Supporting Actress and Original Song. Maybe, if it's very lucky, it could win International Feature. But I really don't think that's happening anymore. And I think anything outside of that would be truly shocking for Emilia Perez to win. But I can't shake the feeling that it is indeed possible, because this category does not have a clear frontrunner, and the editing is very, very showy. So I don't think it's going to happen, but a part of me is saying it is possible. Third most likely to win is Wicked. Okay, so this is interesting because this movie was not predicted to be nominated for Best Editing, and yet I feel like there's a reasonable possibility that it could win the Oscar. Because, first and foremost, this movie and Emilia Perez are the only two nominees in this category that are also up for Best Sound. And historically, it's been shown that there can be a correlation between Best Editing and Best Sound. On top of that, because this movie is a musical, there is some very showcasey editing shown in scenes like What Is This Feeling or Popular or Dancing Through Life, or even the action set piece of Defying Gravity at the end. Plus, it's worth pointing out that this movie is 2 hours, 40 minutes, and from my perspective, it does not feel that long. It really does flow very smoothly. But not everybody has necessarily agreed. I have heard people saying that this is too long and you could have cut this down. Even if I don't personally agree with that, I can't deny that that opinion is out there. I think there's going to be eyes on it because of the musical numbers. There's going to be eyes on it because of the way editing is used in certain key moments of the film. But it's not the flashiest. There's a reason why this wasn't doing great in the precursors leading up to the Oscar. And so I think it's possible, but I'm not going to predict it. Second most likely to win is Anora. Okay, so the editing in this film is one of the least showiest of all the nominees. But that's not to say it's completely invisible. The whole middle chunk of the film, when everyone is looking for Vanya, there is some noticeable. I really do like the way the home invasion sequence in this film is paced. I like that it always feels energetic, and I really like that whole section. And I do think I've seen a lot of people say that because there's no clear frontrunner in this category, then Anora, being the best picture frontrunner, they're just going to go with that. And the argument does make a certain degree of sense, especially given the kinetic nature of that second act. But again, it's not as showy as some of the other nominees, and it does slow down in the third act. And here's the thing that I really want to say. A lot of people always talk about how there is a connection between Best Editing and Best Picture. And I do think that's true when it comes to nominations. Movies like Green Book and Nomadland, they only got nominated for Best Editing so that you knew that it was going to be a contender in Best Picture. But that doesn't mean that the movie that wins picture always wins editing. That doesn't happen as often as you would think. I mean, the last 2 years we got Everything Everywhere and Oppenheimer, but those were both films that had very showy editing. Those movies would win editing even if they weren't winning picture. And before Everything Everywhere, the most recent Best Picture winner to also take editing was Argo. And that movie was a thriller. It used editing in a very effective way. It was a lot of suspense in that movie. And then a few years before that, Hurt Locker, same thing. Now, granted, once you get into the 2000s and earlier, you can probably find some good examples, but I'm specifically looking within the last 20 years because the Oscars have changed a lot recently, and so I don't want to look too far back. But the point still stands. The Oscars are not just going to give a movie editing because they're giving it picture. In fact, we can see a great counterexample of this with Parasite. A lot of people assumed that because the movie was doing well in picture that it would win editing, but it lost to Ford v Ferrari, which not really contender to win picture at all, but had arguably the showiest editing. And so it is tough. I do think Anora does stand a chance at winning this category. I think all the nominees except Brutalist stand a chance, but the movie that I am predicting number one most likely to win is Conclave. Okay, so this movie, first and foremost, is the shortest of all the nominees, which the same argument that I used against Brutalist I think could help the movie here, because it does cover a lot of ground in a relatively quick amount of time. It's exactly 2 hours long, and the film has an effective use of montage, and it is also a thriller. Not with a lot of like guns or stuff, but suspense is a key part of the film. And I do think that this is a real possibility. This has the one main precursor. This has the BAFTA. Critics' Choice went to a movie that's not nominated, and we have no idea what ACE is going to do. So this is sort of the only precursor that we can go off of. And it's tough because critics, obviously BAFTA gave the movie Best Picture on top of editing, so you can argue, oh, they're just biased towards the movie. It really is not a whole lot to go off of at all, and yet it's kind of the only thing we have. And even taking the precursor out of it, Conclave does feel the most like an editing winner to me out of all these nominees, I think because of the way the movie is paced. Because of the use of montage and the tension that builds throughout the narrative. And it's not the showiest editing of the year. I'm still shocked that Challenger, September 5, The Substance, movies like those, Dune Part 2, could not contend. But it's tough. It's tough. And I'm recording this very late at night, which is why I'm not really saying as much as I should. I didn't even talk about who the nominees themselves are, which is a shame. Maybe I'll add that in a little note at the end. You know what? I've stuck to a pretty good schedule of getting one video out a day, and I'm proud of that. So, yeah, once the Oscars are over, I can finally start going to bed a little earlier. Well, thank you very much for watching. Conclave is my official prediction. Tomorrow is my big finale Best Picture video. See you then.